Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I trust you had a great weekend. Let me start with an article I wrote this weekend. I was referencing the fact that WTI was down for the 10th consecutive day on Friday, and that is the longest streak of daily losses since WTI futures started trading 35 years ago. And my piece touched on this. WTI, American crude oil, peaked at a 4-year high price of $76 plus at the beginning of October. It closed at $60.10 on Friday, but has subsequently rebounded to 61. WTI crude oil posted a record-beating sequence of a 10-session losing streak through Friday, something the price of oil has never done since records began in 1983. Brent crude closed at a 4-year high of just below $86 at around the same time. It closed at $70.41 on Friday. Both crude oil benchmarks are in bear markets. In fact, crude oil and the FANGs were a bright spot in 2018 through October until they got destroyed. On the 2nd of October, Jamal Khashoggi, a well-known journalist and critic of the Saudi government, walked into the country's consulate in Istanbul. He has not been seen since. In fact, President Erdogan, whose normal modus operandi is one of bluster and braggadocio, has played this macabre murder on Turkish soil with finesse, and a little like Yehudi Menuhin played the violin. It's been a virtuoso performance from a geopolitical perspective. The drip-drip feed has meant closure has been all but impossible for the House of Saud, or is it the House of Salman? Erdogan's rebound from zero, you will recall the currency was crashing around his ears not too long ago, and he was in serious cold turkey to hero has been spectacular. The target has always been MBS, alleged owner of Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi, which is a painting of Christ as Salvator Mundi, Latin for Saviour of the world, dated to circa 1500. The painting shows Jesus in Renaissance dress, giving a benediction with his right hand raised and 2 fingers extended, while holding a transparent rock crystal orb in his left hand. The rock crystal orb, of course, reappeared during Trump's visit to the Desert Kingdom. The painting is currently in the Louvre in Abu Dhabi because the optics of this $450 million purchase did not sit well with being the son and the heir to the kingdom. The king is called the custodian of the 2 holy mosques after all. MBS is also the proud owner of the Serene, a yacht which he bought for 500 million euros in 2015 while vacationing in the south of France. Bruce Rydell alleges MBS sleeps on the Serene off Jeddah because he too lives in fear of his life. Mr. Khashoggi was murdered in cold blood and in an obviously Quentin Tarantino-style operation. The facts, as have been presented, are stranger than fiction. And my question is, if this is how they conduct themselves on foreign soil, just imagine what must be going on at home. The image of Khashoggi's son being compelled to shake MBS's hand is surely the most apposite metaphor for the House of Saud. The proximity of the beginning of the bear market in crude oil and the disappearance of Khashoggi is no coincidence. The sell-off was manufactured by the Crown Prince and was his response and an attempt to release some of the pressure from the geopolitical pressure cooker. It produced a tailwind, or did not allow the price of gas to become a headwind for President Trump as he entered the midterms. Now behind us, of course, it was actually a setup trade. It was the only get-out-of-jail card that the Crown Prince could play The question is, does this keep on spinning lower under its own momentum? Initially, the markets reacted as if the Democrat gains in the midterms were likely to dial down the president's tariff war. We saw risk-based assets like the Rand rally to below 14. We saw proxy war currencies like the Australian dollar rebound as well. Then he said this: if Wall Street is involved and continues to insinuate itself in these negotiations, there will be a stench around any deal that's consummated, because it will have the imprimatur of Goldman Sachs and Wall Street. Mr. Navarro lashed out at what he called a self-appointed group of Wall Street bankers and hedge fund managers who he described as globalist billionaires. The mission of these unregistered foreign agents, that's what they are unregistered foreign agents, is to pressure this president into some kind of deal, Mr. Navarro said. And I concluded by saying there might not be much Christmas cheer this year, except, of course, for oil consumers. OPEC edges closer to production cut as Saudi Arabia confirms it will limit supplies next month. Saudi Arabia's oil minister said the kingdom was ready to cut production by 500,000 barrels a day in December. Referencing Navarro, go back to that piece I wrote, Tariff Wars, Who Blinks First? And then there is a lot of detail if you don't want to listen to the interview, which is also on the website, Economic Security as National Security Discussion with Dr. Peter Navarro. It's worth listening to in full because I think his line of thinking is where Trump is going to go. He called it, the US-China, as the tap dance of economic dialogue. Where's the beef? And I wrote about him in October when I said US Trade Rep Robert Lighthizer and Dr. Peter Navarro have operated with surgical precision and have introduced an anti-dragon clause. And that was when I was writing about how war is coming. Trump's trade advisor said they want to get us to the bargaining table, sound reasonable, talk their way and have their way with us. Also around that time was the incident with the USS Decatur, where a Chinese warship came within 45 yards of the Decatur in the South China Sea, and I said it's surely a precursor. And I was also saying B-52s are buzzing China practically daily.